Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. So, in the case where someone died having prayers in their due, having fasts in their due, but yet had not included them in their bequest, then he says, يخرج عنه وليهم من ثلث ما ترك. Right? So sorry, my mistake. If they had specified, if they had specified that they have these number of prayers, these number of fasts, then their wali, then their guardian, the one who is responsible to discharge their will, they take out from their will, from min thuluthi ma tarak, from up to a third of what they left behind, meaning of their inheritance. لِصَوْمِ كُلِّ يَوْمٍ, for the fast of every single day. So what? Because you fast by day, so each fast you must make a material payment for each missed fast. وَلِصَلَاةِ كُلِّ وَقْتٍ, and for every prayer one must make this expiatory payment. حَتَّى الْوِتْرِ, right? Including the witr, because it is wajib, so it also enters stickingly in one's dues, right? The sunnahs enter one's dues, right? But when the time goes out, they exit. They don't remain in the dues, right? Right? If you discharge them within the time, you're rewarded for them. But then, so the sunnahs don't really enter in the dues, right? They're sort of like, it's almost like if there's a container, they're on top of the container. You could take them through the container into profit, but if you miss them, you can't make them up. How much is the payment? نِصْفَ صَاعٍ مِّن بُرٍ, half a sa' of bur. What's bur? Of wheat. أَوْ قِيمَتَهُ, or its price, which is better because it is generally more beneficial for the poor. And this is given to the poor, right? That is, if it is, this is the first case. They died, they left, they fulfilled their responsibility, which they left in their living will, that they have prayers and fasts to make up. So their guardian, the one responsible for discharging their debt, then has the authorization, is responsible, it is wajib, to take that, but only from a third, because you cannot make a bequest in Islam of more than a third by default. If that's done, so someone left behind assets of, I've been in a situation, someone left assets of £250,000, but 160,000 pounds of it had to go to expiate for their religious dues. And they started praying and fasting at the end of their life, but they had decades of mista. That there's family members who started praying, because it hits the wallet. Now, of course, we made the calculation, but they didn't pay the whole amount. One, because beyond the third, but also because in consideration of the circumstances of the family, etc., I consulted some of the ulama. We said, what's a substantial amount that could be taken? That for sure covered all the fasts, but covered a chunk of the prayers. And there's a way, it's called a dawr. There's a way of, it's a legal mechanism, a hila, it's a hila mashru'a. It's an acceptable legal mechanism to clear the excessive due. But it got people thinking very seriously. And this amounts to about how much? Anyone look at it? How much is nisf sa'?
In a simplicity, it says 2.2 grams.
2.2 kilograms.
It tells me, it says 1.6 in this copy.
Yeah.
3.25.
That's for a sa'. Nisf sa' is half of 3.25. Right? So they differ in the weights. Is it? But the weight used by Sheikh Faraz Khan, 2.25. Is it 2.2 or 2.25? 2.2. 2.2 kilos. Where does he reference it from?
He said that's what Sheikh Ahmed uses.
Yeah. And there's other similar weights, but 2.2, 2.5, they vary. Kilos, because a sa' is like a bowl, right? So half a bowl worth of that, which would be roughly 2.2 to 2.5 kilos, possibly less than that. So that's in the case where, so if someone was diligent, they would have diagrammed all of this to begin with, right? Someone dies, if they died before ability, if they died in the case of not being able to pray, paralysis, etc. With before ability, nothing to make up, prayers. After ability, and they missed some prayers, then the prayers that they missed, that they were able to pray. Like they're asleep because they're not well. Those are the prayers that they have to make up, that they have to make wasiyah for. But in general, they had to leave a wasiyah. If they did, they've left a bequest. The guardian, the person responsible for discharging their estate, makes an expiatory payment, a kafara, of the material value of 2.2 kilos of wheat for every, and you can on e-nisab you can find the weight value of this, e-nisab, right? For each missed fast and every single missed prayer. So each day of prayers is roughly 15 kilos of wheat. So a year is over 5 tons of wheat. 365 times 15. Like 5 tons of wheat per year. So someone missed 30 years of prayer, that's 150,000 tons of wheat. Right? I think Punjabi friends of ours can think about what a big harvest that would entail. Right? Of course, the reality of the prayer is far more significant than that. Now that can easily, you can see how easily this can go beyond the estate that's left behind. Right? Why? Because, especially in our times, because the problem people fall into in our times is debt. It's debt. I have friends who are very, who make a lot of money, but they're, in relative terms, they're, by Shari'i terms, basically poor. Because in a consumer culture, they spend beyond their means. Whereas debt is something really bad. Unless there's clear need for it, right? There's one takes on debt to establish a company or to get an education or something that is purposeful, to get married. So, applies to several of you, so don't snicker. Right? Right? Her parents are asking for 50,000 in mahar, but she's worth it. Right? So, of course, the advice would be negotiate. And don't do the negotiation, get experienced people to negotiate. And there's a trick for that as well. Right? In the worst case scenario, if Zubayda's parents say, you have to give us $150,000 mahar. You can't give 150,000. So what you do? First, you establish clearly that, and Zubaydah doesn't want the 150,000, but parents insist. Establish clearly that the mahar belongs to the wife, not the parents. For the parents to take it, it's considered a type of false imposition. It's maks. It's like wrongly taking tax. Right? It's haram money for the family to take the mahar. So you fed her all your life because Allah commanded you to. It's not a debt that you repay through the mahar. Anyway, that's number one. Number two, Zubaydah agrees to, I'm fine with a $10,000 mahar. You agree to $150,000 mahar, and then you make, what's the concept? What can Zubaydah do with her right? Isqat. She can waive it. She can waive it. But of course, she should do so of her own goodwill. Right? You can't force someone to waive their right. That's called wrong. Right? There's dhulm. Anyways, that's a use. Fuqaha actually compile books of legal tricks. And because legal tricks, when used right, can be rewarded. When used wrong, you have the sin of doing something wrong and the sin of messing about with the divine command. But sometimes a legitimate trick in the right place, but there's principles, and we'll see one case here. Right? But it adds up. So what if you had this case, $150,000, so left $250,000, $150,000 goes into is the kafara payment, the expiatory payment for fasts and prayers, let's say. So in the case that they left their bequest, but it takes up 150 of 250,000 of their inheritance, can they pay the 150,000? No, because you can only make the bequest from 1/3 of the inheritance, which would be 83,000 and change, right? 83,000 and change, right? 83,333 and 33 cents, etc. Right? Or something like that. So what we do, right? So we'll look at, but you can only take from 1/3. That's the case so far. Next case, وَإِن لَمْ يُوصِ, if the person died not having left a bequest for this. وَتَبَرَّعَ عَنْهُ وَلِيُّهُ جَازٍ, and their guardian made the payment on their behalf, it is valid. Made the payment on their behalf, meaning from the guardian's wealth, right? From the guardian's wealth. And this applies to, so someone died, so Uncle Jamil, rahimahullah, died. Because when Zubair went to finally ask for Zubaydah's hand in marriage, he had a heart attack and died. Now Zubair has to actually help Zubaydah handle the inheritance issues. He did not leave a bequest. So what happens? The guardian could say, well, let's leave the inheritance as it is. I'll make the expiatory payment on their behalf. It's valid. And that can be from the guardian themselves, right? Or anyone else from their household, or someone ajnabi, even a stranger. And one of the things that in the Ottoman times they used to have charities, that specifically people used to give money لأداء الكفارات, right? To make kafaras on behalf of people. You're going to give charity anyways, right? So the Taimur Kafara Trust, right, called Ticket, right? This is Ticket to Mercy, right? Right? Taimur Kafara Trust, right? And Taimur becomes an uncle, so he gets cheesy, right? So what happens? You want to give in charity. You can give plain vanilla charity, just you give money to a poor person. Or you can do it through through this trust. What do? That when they, people who die have unfulfilled fasts and so on, they handle the paying of the kafara on behalf of that deceased person. That clears the deceased person's dues, and it goes to the poor and needy. Goes to the poor and needy. These are the kinds of institutions that Muslims historically built, and these are blessed institutions. Right? And these are all these. In this section, there's a number of kinds of institutions. These are things that we need to be building in our communities, and these bring mercy to the Muslim community when done correctly. And the Ottomans had a lot of these kinds of institutions, and other societies during Mughal times, etc. There's a lot of these institutions. That's why one of the first things any colonizer would do was to drain the awqaf funds, the endowment funds, which destroyed religious institutions, and it also destroyed a lot of the social institutions. So if they did not make a bequest, إِلَّمْ يُوصِي وَتَبَرَّ عَنْهُ وَلِيهُ جَازٍ. This is valid. If their wali, their guardian, does it on their behalf, or a third party, whether family or a stranger. Right? Now why would it be valid? Right? Now we're not making a divine guarantee that if you make this expiation, khalas, nothing is due. Right? This is a legislated means of expressing, of doing good to cover up for the shortcoming. This is an expiation. Min bab innal hasanat yudhibna sayyi'at. Truly good deeds do away with bad deeds. What is the critical variable in how much the good deed counts? Sincerity. Sincerity. Right? And in the case of repentance, what is the key variable for the repentance being accepted? Remorse. Right? So this is a legislated expiation for someone who owes a debt to Allah. This is an expiatory payment. To what extent will it be accepted? That's up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Now, if someone is in a state of harm, if someone's terminally ill and they're drowning, you say, well, you're dying, just die anyways. No, you reduce the harm. You let the poor guy live however long Allah is destined for them to live. Right? You can't do anything about them being terminally ill with cancer, but you can help them not drown right now because they took a walk and they're thinking that I'm going to die, and they fell through the pier and they don't know how to swim. You still rescue them. You do what you can. So similarly here, in this case, there's a legislated expiation. To what extent would it count? To the extent of the sincerity involved in this, when they're making it, or in the case of the one giving. right? And it serves as a type of dua, right? Just like donating reward, etc. There's a form of making dua. Can I say, Allahumma ighfir li akhi? Of course. Right? So legislating the Quran. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ وَلِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. They committed a sin, why am I asking for forgiveness? Because I care about their good. And Allah accepts the dua of others. If you make dua for good, it's mercy from Allah. So it's legislated means of mercy. How much? From our part, it depends on sincerity, in the case of the deceased person, remorse. And we don't know what extent of remorse. What happens in the final moment, we don't know. And it returns back to the mercy and justice of Allah. Right? And on the day of resurrection, manifest will be perfect mercy, perfect justice, and perfect wisdom. Right? As it is manifest, yet hidden to us in this life. Imam al-Ghazali, when he talks about divine wisdom, he makes the point that if we had full knowledge of how things are, we would not make anything different from the way it is. Not that we could not even imagine making it better than the way it is. Which is why, as bad as things maybe appear, we believe that things are absolutely perfect. هذا خلق الله. This is the creating of Allah. And we should not forget that when things are as they are. You couldn't make it any better. If you think you are, that's delusions of divinity. Right? That's something we think, okay, if it was up to me, I would stop the war in Syria, stop the war in Iraq, stop this. Right? It is ultimately it's not possible for it to be more perfect than it is. As Imam al-Ghazali said, لَيْسَ فِي الْإِمْكَانِ أَبْدَعْ مِمَّا كَانَ. It is not within possibility for things to be more perfect than they are. That's مِن مُقْتَضَى كَوْنِهِ حَكِيمًا. It's entailed by Allah being the all-wise. Anyways, so that's where this issue arises from. Because we're not saying that, okay, you do this, khalas, the dead person has a clear slate. No. This is a legislated expiatory act to compensate for the sin that they committed. Its acceptance is dependent on the degree of remorse and sincerity from one side, and it returns to Allah's mercy, justice, and wisdom. And we leave the matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have raja. We are hopeful. وَلَا يَصِحُّ أَن يَصُومَ وَلَا أَن يُصَلِّيَ عَنْهُ. It is not valid for another to pray, to fast on their behalf. وَلَا أَن يُصَلِّيَ. Nor to pray on their behalf. Right? This is من حيث إسقاط الواجب. This is insofar as you are lifting what is due upon them. But you can ويصح ويستحب ماذا؟ إهداء الثواب. ويصح ويستحب إهداء الثواب. It is valid and recommended to donate the reward of any good action. You can pray and donate the reward of the prayer. Right? And what is donating reward? It's a type of dua with your action. When you donate the reward, do you miss the reward of your prayer? Like, it's not like a bank transfer. Right? You prayed, I donate the reward, so you lost the reward of your prayer. No. Right? functionally is like you're asking Allah with your action, oh Allah, grant so and so the equivalent of the reward of these 2 rak'ahs of the prayer. But you're expressing by your action that you really want it for them. Because I could just say, oh Allah, grant Sidi Hamza the reward of 2 rak'ahs of prayer. But it's much more expressive of my concern if I do it and ask Allah to grant it to you. Right? That's the donating reward. Sheikh Faraz Khan, since we الشيء بالشيء يذكر, one thing is mentioned with another, he has an excellent, well explained answer on the issue of donating reward. There's consensus of all 4 schools of Sunni Islam that anything that you can do yourself, you can donate the reward of it to another. And you can donate the reward to another as an individual or a collective or even to everybody. It's like you can say, can you say, Allahumma gfir lil muslimina wal muslimat? Allah forgive the Muslims, male and female? Yeah. So you give, let's say you give some sadaqah and you intend that the reward of this reach all the believers. How much reaches? Al-Kareem la tatakhattahu al-amal. The most generous, highest hopes do not exceed them and do not outstrip him. So now we're now in the case that they left the bequest, right? In the case 250,000 is the inheritance. They left a bequest, but how much is bequestable? 83K and change. But their kafara is 167,000. Let's just make it simple, right? And change, and double change, right? So now, what do we do, right? Now, one thing is that the inheritor, there's a few things that are implicit here, right? The inheritors can pool in their own money. Someone can say, we'll make the payment, right? But that's already been addressed. The inheritors can agree, and this gets tricky. That's why having someone reliably discharge the inheritance is important. The inheritors can agree. So let's say Uncle Jamil died, his wife, his son and daughter are the inheritors. Right? No one else. Small nuclear family. So they all love Uncle Jamil. He's a good guy. A bit intimidating, but a good guy. So they all said, look, let's make the payment. Right? As an expiation. But ما افتقر من إسقاط على رضا الغير فلا بد فيه من رضا الظاهر والباطن. Something where, waiving one's right, when the right of another is to be waived, then we have to take care to ensure that they agree to it outwardly and inwardly, so that they're not being pressured into it, right? Because let's say it's a big family. Mother, Uncle Jamil left behind, wife, and 6 kids. 5 are married, only Zubaydah is not married. And they're all wealthy except Zubaydah. So they all say, let's waive our shares. He said, Zubaydah, do you agree? So all her siblings, mother, and then uncles and aunties who are not inheritors, but they're looking on. What will Zubaydah say? No, I want my money. Right? Of course not. So and this is a sensitive thing, right? And one of the ways to deal with that is to ask each person the question in private, not together. You encourage them publicly, but you consult with them privately. Right? So if there's 4 inheritors, you encourage them, this is something you can do, etc. All think about it. And maybe let them talk briefly to each other, but then you ask each one if they agree to it in private. And you don't allow them to disclose to one another who didn't agree. Because preserving family relationships is very important in these sensitive times. Many cases, families break apart after the death of a key member of the family. And that's like the man who came from the town said, who died, the believer, who died, we mentioned Surah Yusuf, Ya layta qawmi ya'lamun. If only my people knew. Right? That, the guidance of the Sharia has so much mercy for individuals and families, but we distance ourselves. But learning the deen is to apply these things. To ask ourselves the question, do I have a living will? I keep one on my hard drive. Question is, can anyone find it? It's a challenge. Right now I have an excuse because I have no space at home, but problem in the office is people use it like it's their room. Right? Last year in Ramadan, someone's actually, I was not able to pray. I go to my office, someone's sitting there with their feet on the table. I don't even know who they are. So I'm just resting. They kept their feet on my table. I have books there. When I noticed there's books, I said, can I just move the books aside? I said, oh, sorry. Because, stretching your feet to books is pretty serious. Anyways, so in the simple case, 83,000 is bequestable. Let's say the kafara was actually, let's simplify the numbers. The kafara was 240,000. Bequestable was 80,000. So what do you have to do? Now you give what you can, right? You give what you can, and that's, at one level, that's sufficient. We feel bad. We are only able to give this much, right? So you make the pay. But the fuqaha said, and this is taught with caution, right? That don't get funny ideas on how you pay debts and stuff. This is in caution. What do? You agree with a poor person, we'll give you this, right? And you gather the funds in a way possible, right? Right? You give the funds fully to the poor person, but it has to be given. You can't just say, I give you these funds, and say, give it back. There has to be an act, because shartul hibati al-qabd, right? Right? Well, you need what? In giving, well, shartul tabarru' al-qabd, or shartul tamam al-tabarru' al-qabd. The condition for an act of giving, which includes a gift, charity, etc., is, let's say, Auntie Sadia, the millionaire, she says, I hereby give you $1,000 in sadaqah. The person, I accept. That's ijab and qabul, but you didn't actually give it, right? You don't owe them $1,000 yet, because unless the transfer of ownership has happened, right? And that has to do with ahkam al-tabarru', right? The fiqh of giving. I gifted an old friend who I get annoyed with frequently a book. They made a lot of hoo and ha about it over the weekend, but they left the book. I was wondering, did they actually take possession of it? Because if they didn't, then I could express my annoyance by just giving it to someone else. But if they took possession of it, I can't do that, because now it belongs to them. But then I have more annoyance, because now I have to tell them that your book is in my office. So, in this case, $240,000 expiation due, bequestable is 80,000. So we give it to the poor person once, with full taking of ownership, having agreed with the poor person, and then they will fully give it back with transfer of ownership. So how much has been given of the expiation amount? 80,000. And then we give it a second time with full transfer of ownership. Another 80,000 has been given, and they give it back, full transfer of ownership, and they give it a third time. But then the poor person has to keep it. The permissibility of this hila, of this legal trick, rests on that amount being given. You force the poor person to give it back a final time, then you are sinful. Right? Because at the end of it, no charity was given. Right? Now, how do you do this? Because people don't understand this kind of stuff. Even poor people would object. So let's say that Auntie Sadia knows someone who used to be a local princess in southern Afghanistan, from a family of royalty, etc. But now it's dirt poor, right? And you want to give them charity, but they won't accept it. One of the things you can do is you can give it to an agent on behalf of the person, right? So someone agrees to act as an agent on behalf of the recipient, and you do this with the agent, so that, right? So it's not something you go telling people that, well, this is the way we do it. If people don't get it, they don't have respect for the limits, they won't get this, right? So what do? He says, وَإِن لَمْ يَفِي مَا يوصى به عما عليه وإن لم يفي ما أوصى به عما عليه يدفع ذلك المقدار للفقير فيسقط عن الميت بقدره ثم يهبه الفقير للولي ويقبضه ثم يدفعه للفقير ثانيا فيسقط بقدره ثم يهبه الفقير للولي ويقبضه ثم يدفعه الولي للفقير وهكذا حتى يسقط ما كان على الميت من صلاة وصيام. Right? And if the amount that was left in the bequest or that was bequestable was not enough to cover the expiation due, one gives the amount that what could be given, or ذلك المقدار أو قدرا because this can be done in various cases. It can be done in the case where the amount due is more than the wasiyah, or the person didn't leave a bequest. Right? $250,000 inheritance, net inheritance, because people's debts, etc., are cleared first. The rights of human beings are deducted first. Right? So the net inheritance is $250,000. They didn't leave any bequest, which is the default case in our times, unfortunately. Having living wills is such an urgent communal obligation, and facilitating that. So in that case, the inheritors come together and say, look, this is due, etc., etc., etc. How much would you guys be, so the total amount of 250,000, technically, you help them make the calculation, because people don't know. What is due on Uncle Jamil is 100,000. Now everyone has their needs, right? Desi uncles die typically in their 60s or 70s. Their kids are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're still getting established worldwide. So what happens? Everyone has their fiscal needs, right? People have their debts, their student loans, their life debts. They have to pay Zubayda's mahar, all these different things. Zubayda has to pay for, different ventures that she was in. So what do? you get them to agree on an amount that they're willing to give. Right? And this is a good opportunity for them, if handled with sensitivity, I've seen it many times, to appreciate the seriousness of the matter of prayer, etc. But you let them give an amount that they're comfortable with. 10,000, 20,000, whatever. Because it gets divided amongst a number of people, right? So it doesn't feel so big. And people, usually when they get big amounts, they find it easy to forego big amounts, but you don't make it too big. And then you agree to let them appoint someone as their agent to discharge this. Someone who would know how to do this. But it's important to do it correctly. Because these kinds of things, they require thiqat, trustworthy people. And processes of accountability and stuff. I was in a case where the person responsible for discharging it decided to buy themselves a car. They didn't tell anybody. Right? And so one has to be very careful. Alhamdulillah, we solved the issue. But so, and then what happens? That amount is given to a poor person. Given to them, يدفع للفقير, and they take possession. فيسقط, so from the deceased person, that amount is lifted off their due. And then the poor person gifts it to the appointed person, the guardian or other, willingly, right? Willingly. And they can have agreed to this beforehand. At that point, if the poor person walks away, they can't be taken to court, right? There has to be actual transfer of ownership, and and there must, and then the guardian takes possession of it, and then they pay it to the poor person again, and that amount is lifted, and it's gifted to the poor person. Gifted by the poor person to the wali again, and he takes possession of it, and this goes back and forth until the expiatory amount due is cleared, with the money in the end remaining with the poor person, right? And the hope is that Allah accepts that expression of concern, right? And this is the fuqaha debated this extensively, and there's been centuries worth of agreement in the Hanafi school that this is permitted, praiseworthy, and there's much spiritual benefit, but also much societal, religious benefit in doing this. Right? Because people realize the gravity of these things. But it has to be applied with wisdom. Right? And as Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, لا حكيم إلا ذو تجربة. No one is wise except through experience. تجربة. ويجوز إعطاء فدية صلوات لواحد. It is permitted to give the fidya, the expiatory payment of many prayers to one person. جملة, in one go. بخلاف كفارة اليمين, contrary to the expiation for an oath, which we'll look at. والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم. And Allah, glorified and exalted is He, knows best. So this is this section that requires a little bit of expanding. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding. This is explained very beneficially in the Hadiyah al-Ala'iyya as well. We sometimes refer to this as Mas'alatul Dawr. The fuqaha refer to this with several such expressions. And then next section we have Qada'ul Fawaid, making up missed prayers. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.